Hi there, and welcome to 15-Minute Consulting Best Practices. I'm David A. Fields, and we're going to dive right into questions. And while Deidre's putting up the first question on the screen, take a moment and type in the chat where you are today. So I know where folks are today. I know that Christy, you're out in the West Coast. Shateria, apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Just tell me where you are. Anyone else, just tell us where you are. And Deidre, what's the first question we have today? Here's the question. My prospect has agreed to a project, but now their purchasing department sent a long contract with tons of conditions. Well, that bites. What conditions are acceptable, and should I fight over any of them? All right, we got Portland, we got Buffalo, we got Denver. Excellent. All right, so this is an interesting question. And while I'm answering this, Deidre, also you could put up where how people can connect with me on LinkedIn if they aren't, and that sort of thing. All right. So, what contract conditions should you accept? What contract conditions should you fight? And if you've been in consulting for any length of time, I'm sure you've run into this, where you are, you think you have things sorted out, and then all of a sudden, procurement or whomever sends this craziness, to you, some 15-page legal document. And well, let's see, we got Atlanta, also Denver, San Diego, Massachusetts. Excellent. All right. Okay, so first things first. This is not legal advice because I'm not an attorney. I can't give you legal advice. So don't take any of this as legal advice. I will tell you practical advice. What do you fight over? What don't you fight over? And then how? Like, how do you fight this? So let's tackle those. And in fact, I would think of clauses in legal contracts in sort of three buckets. Some being, who cares, right? Don't fight over it. Some you'll want to contest a little bit. And then there are some you should die on your sword over. So think of in these buckets. The vast majority of what your procurement department sends to you that's boilerplate is harmless. You can run it by your attorney, but it's not a big deal. What I would fight over, but perhaps not sort of die on my sword over, are things like payment terms, because as a matter of course, they will say, well, we'll pay you in 90 days, that kind of stuff. That you should fight because it's absurd and you're not their bank. So, yeah, push back on that kind of thing. Also, this happened recently to one of our clients. They received one of these documents, and the document said, you cannot change anything. Don't believe that. You can't. So things like payment terms, perhaps not a big deal. You can push back on them some, but would I lose a contract over it? Probably not. Not worth it. So what's actually worth losing a contract over? The one category, the one clause that for me and for my clients and for us, we're most sticklers about is ownership of IP. And this you really do need to look into and check on, because most procurement departments will basically say anything you do, it's fee for service work. We own everything. And by the way, any ideas you come up with, any of that kind of stuff, it all falls in there. So you have to look at those contracts and those clauses in the contract and make sure that you're not being sucked into anything where you're giving away your IP. Or where they have any license to reuse it, which is another thing buried in there, where they say, well, they get unlimited usage for anything. No. You do not own our IP. As consultants, this is our livelihood. You own the output that we give to you. You may use that output for very specific reasons. You may use it for inside your own practice, for instance, or inside your own business. You may not resell it. You may not show it outside your business. This is worth, for me, worth losing a client over. And most of the time, they will agree to that. So let's talk about how you fight this just for a moment. Like, what do you do if you're up against some giant procurement department? The first thing I would suggest you remember is never take on a problem that you can share with your client. So if you've presumably come to agreement with a decision maker, on the contract, on the engagement. And so you want to bring them into the loop and say, look, Sarah, the procurement department is in the way here, and they're at risk of scuttling this whole engagement. Can you help out? So just enlist them. And then Sarah will go over and be like, what the hell are you doing? This is important to us. We've chosen this consulting firm to work with us. Figure it out. They're just a little firm. Okay, so that's the first thing to do. Just engage your decision maker. The other thing is, don't be afraid to push back. Even when they say there are no changes allowed, the fact is there are absolutely changes allowed. And your secret question, if you will, is, has there ever been an exception, to this clause in this contract? And the moment they say, well, yes, there is ever, well, then we're your next exception, because there's always exceptions to these, but all the time. The only time where there aren't is if you are we've had contracts with firms that, or where we're working with the Department of Defense or something like that. And some of that you can't get around. Okay, so that should help. And also I would treat procurement, try to cooperatively, right? They're just trying to do their job. So go in there and talk with them and say, what do you need? How do we make this work? How do we solve this challenge in a way that's fair to both of us? Okay. If you have other questions, so does that, hopefully if you've run into that and you're like, oh, I don't know, or if you have a question, type it in the chat, wherever the chat is, and I will see it. Otherwise, give me a yes, that helps, or a thumbs up in the chat, or no, David, that was confusing. So I know where we are on this one. And while they're doing that, Deidre, why don't we jump to the next question? What was the next question people submitted? And let's see. Question. I feel like I'm plodding through mud. I'm doing all the right things to build my practice, but I'm not getting anywhere, particularly in terms of winning business, and it's exhausting. What should I do? All right. That's a drag. So again, if you don't mind, if you're listening in, and for those of you who are seeing this on replay, just shoot me a direct message. Say, yeah, that rings a bell. That resonates with me. And I will answer this question, Christy, about boilerplate language. Let's go through this question and I'll circle back. If this idea of sort of you're just exhausted, you're working hard and not getting anywhere, and it's tiring, if that resonates, let me know. And I'll give you a few tips. Virtually every consulting firm and consultant runs into this, because there are times, partly just because we work with low numbers. I mean, a typical consultant, a typical small consulting firm has fewer than 40 clients at a time. Some consultants have 3 or 4 or 5 clients, which means you're going to go into periods that feel like a pretty down trough. And you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying, but I'm not winning. Again, just sort of law of small numbers. So what can you do to make it a little bit less exhausting? And especially in times right now, because right now there's definitely some headwind. There's definitely, you're swimming against some current. A few things. One is I would ritualize the work that you find cumbersome, that you find onerous, so that it takes very little energy. If, for instance, outreach is just I hate outreach and it's a slog, ritualize it, meaning make it something you don't have to think about and put much work into. You can automate it. You can say, well, Wednesday morning, it's 9 a.m. Certain things pop up. Here's my 10 people I'm going to reach out to. Here's the one-liner I can do a 111 email to. And 10 minutes later, you're done. And it doesn't take much energy. So use your systems, use good practices, 111 emails, some automation, an assistant to help you to take the energy expenditure out. And then it'll feel less like a slog. Christy says you could try asking ChatGPT. Certainly something, I don't know if that was for the IP or for this. You can use ChatGPT to help you draft emails. It does this so-so job, but it at least get you started if you're struggling. Another thing to make it a little bit less of a slog is to try to find some joy in the work. If you are, again, let's just use business development because it tends to be an energy suck for a lot of consultants. If you're finding reaching out to people is exhausting, it's just taking so much energy, chances are you're trying to find work, meaning you're approaching each call with this idea of, if I do this right, maybe I'll get a project. Let that go. Where do you find joy? You probably do find some joy in just connecting with people, connecting with another human being, learning about them, sharing some excitement, uh, spreading a little bit of enthusiasm. So if you treat your outreach as an opportunity to do that, to connect, to be with another person, to just take some joy in the process, it will be less of a slog. So do that. So find ways to actually make some of the work just a little bit more fun. It takes some of the negative out of it. And the last piece I would say is, do bake in some pieces of the work that are genuinely rewarding for yourself. Do stuff that will give you a reward. If you like writing, write for a little bit each day. Or what actually gives energy to you. Perhaps you just love solving problems, as many consultants do. You just take joy in solving a difficult problem, and yet you don't have client work right now. Well, take on a pro bono project for a nonprofit that's got a bit of a thorny challenge, and take some joy in doing that. Can you devote all your time to it? No, because you do have to go out and win your next projects. But you can at least be in the part of the work that you really enjoy. Um, absolutely agree. Our work should be rewarding. It absolutely should be. There's an article recently on the site. Bazillion articles. I think there's an article recently about this, so that's worth taking a look at. Let me circle back. Christy asked, "Do you have some standard boilerplate language we can add to our proposals around IP?" The answer to that is probably. Yes, if you reach out to me, we do have some fairly standard language. I think we have a short version, which if you're in an informal proposal, you can use, which is basically something to the extent of, our IP is IP, and then we may have a longer version that works better for folks who are dealing with these legal types. So yeah, you can direct message me. And then there's another question came up. More details would be great on how to ritualize work. Okay. That's a really good question, Thomas. So the way you ritualize work. So first of all, our clients, for instance, have something called a BD ritualizer. It's just a tool that helps you sort out the work you're doing and make it take less energy, less of a decision, and more of a, here's just something that happens. And that's what a ritual is. The nice thing about a ritual is you don't have to think about it. The shortcut on rituals is this: what do you want the behavior to be, and what, or the action to be, and what's the trigger? Because the whole point of a ritual is a certain trigger happens, and then a behavior or an action follows it. That trigger can be a time of day. It can be some other activity. It can be, I have a trigger. The way we work is, after I have a conversation with a prospect, my assistant Jaren has put a little button here that says basically that conversation is done, and it automatically pops up an email pre-templated, the person's name, and all I have to do is say thank you. That's what happens. Those are sort of triggers. That's how you ritualize something. I don't have to think, should I write an email? Shouldn't I? How should I start it? What do I have to do? No, it's a ritual. At the end of a conversation, I press a button. Ritual. Follow-up email pops up. I populate it. Email goes out. So hopefully that helps and get you in the right direction. So holy cow, we didn't get to a ton of questions this time. However, there's always next week. Because we do this every week, 15 minutes. I can't believe it's 14 minutes already. I do have a couple of requests before you go. If you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, then please connect. It says down there, LinkedIn, David A. Fields. If you don't see my weekly articles, please come read. There's so much more information in there, and they're free. And if nothing else, you can laugh at the stick figures or say, really? a serious seven-figure consultant does stick figures? Yes. So just subscribe, and Deidre's put up how to subscribe. And my third request is submit questions for next week. You can submit questions. A couple folks have done it here. You can email us. You can do it on info at David A. Fields. So thank you for being here. Have a fabulous week. Remember, consulting is not about you. It's about them, your prospects and your clients. So give them value and give them kindness. And we will see you next week.